welcome back to the chilly city of Alpenglow. In this episode, we're going to be hopping across the freeway from the neighborhood we made last episode, and just filling in a few areas to set up the very last portion of development in the city of Alpenglow. Yes, the series is almost over, but I think that means that exciting things are coming because I have some videos that I'm very happy with that will showcase the city and allow you to see it in a bit more detail. But I'm not going to spoil anything yet, so let's get into my thoughts on what I'm building here. So as we move away from the downtown, I wanted the city to look quite a bit more spread out. Like there are some areas that are either reserved as parks, like we have this big area called Arkland Park that we're working next to right now, or there are just plots of land that haven't been developed at all yet. So we're starting off with this little area, which I've now moved on from, but I'll just quickly talk about it. Just a little bit of like a back road area where we have a recycling center and a few other miscellaneous large buildings. But basically, I just wanted it to look like some of these cheaper, broader plots of land farther away from the city have been used for things like that project with the recycling center, or what I'm putting down now with like a little bit of a small industrial area. And just like so much else in this series, you're really seeing me struggle with the limitations I set myself with not having ploppable Rico, that mod that lets you put growable buildings anywhere. So what I have to do is zone the area I want to zone and then go in, plop the buildings I want to do, set them as historical. It's such a silly process that could be easily solved with a mod. But at this point in the series, I figured it was too late to update the mod list. Although, and I might have mentioned this in an earlier episode, but I will be uploading the save game to the workshop with an updated mod list so that it functions with the latest patch to the game, at least as of October 2022. And also, it includes a generally up-to-date set of mods that are going to give you better quality of life when you're going around the city. So let's move on with the build. Sorry, we're moving kind of at lightning pace in this video. That's kind of just the nature of how I recorded the time-lapse. So I'm building here one of the things that is just my favorite. I'm not going to call it my favorite, but it's one of my favorite spots in the city is this bridge that crosses the avenue that runs through Arkland Park. So because we have such a big pedestrian path network in the park, I wanted to give a little bit more accessibility across this road that cuts through the park. So we just have this little wooden bridge, and I just think it looks really nice. And you, like, if you were standing there, you could get a nice view looking down the avenue, lined by trees up toward the mountains and the sky. And I think that would just be a very nice place to spend a winter's day, as long as you're bundled up enough. Because Alpenglow is quite far north, and it's an inland city, of course, so there's no major body of water nearby to moderate the temperature. I'm not sure exactly, I haven't come up with any lore for like the continent this is on or anything like that, although I do have it in my head that it's connected to Todos Santos, one of my other cities, and to Northam Creek, another one of my cities. So this would be probably quite a bit closer to Northam Creek, obviously, since Todos Santos is kind of on the border of tropical and subtropical. And Northam Creek, I think, would actually be a little bit north of this city. But anyway, it's a very, very cold place. It's only 8.6 Fahrenheit now, but when I've gone in and adjusted the latitude, I've seen it get very, very, very cold. But yeah, it's pretty cool. You can go in and adjust the coordinates of your city with the... At the time I was building Alpenglow, it would be the Ultimate Eye Candy mod, I believe, allows you to change the latitude. A more modern option would be Theme Mixer 2, which is a very powerful mod. Allows you to change the map theme, get different textures going, but it also allows you to change things such as the latitude and longitude, the position of the sun, and a lot of those things are tied directly to the map theme. And so that mod just allows you to go in and adjust that stuff. Okay, now we're getting back into something that you're probably pretty familiar with at this point in the series, which is just a pretty standard low-density residential area. Probably better known as a neighborhood. Maybe I should just call it that. But we're starting with this little lake area. I just thought it'd be kind of cool to have a neighborhood centered around this lake. So this lake is called Lake Chanson, and then an area we're going to be developing starting this episode and moving into next episode. Although there are a few technical difficulties with the footage, but I'll get into that next episode. But anyway, this kind of broader area to the east of downtown is considered Chanson, and it's named after this lake. And then there's just a little bit of a neighborhood surrounding it. and there's a little strip of commercial and office on the main road there. And that's generally the sort of zoning I wanted to go for, was to start with a road hierarchy. So we have the bigger roads that don't necessarily have residential zoning on them, but they do have commercial and office and sometimes industrial. And then we have these smaller roads leading off where we have purely residential zoning. And then I'm moving on to just a little bit of detailing, I'm using air quotes there, with some fences. And, it's not as in-depth as I generally like to play this game, but, I always feel like I'm repeating myself when I say this, but this is just supposed to be a very big picture city, fairly close to vanilla. And so I'm really just putting in those fences and also these pedestrian paths here, just to where it's really necessary to just kind of show the separation between these main roads and the residential area. So like these paths here, they would serve as the sidewalk. I would imagine that the roads here don't actually have sidewalks. It's just the pavement where the cars drive, and then the sidewalks would be offset and closer to the residential area. And that's the kind of thing we're getting as we move farther away from downtown. We get that kind of development. And we also get these fences separating the residential area from the main roads. And that's just kind of a consequence of the style of neighborhood we're going for. Okay, and now we're moving into the very last undeveloped section of Alpenglow. And if you see those two one-way roads there that run through the area, that's like the main strip that runs through Chanson. And that road, I believe, runs all the way from downtown. So that's pretty much the main east-west surface road in the city. And that's going to carry all the traffic that's not taking either the freeway or the freeway cutoff across town. So I mentioned before that I had some technical troubles with the footage, and I said I was going to talk about it next episode. I'm actually going to talk about it right now, because this is where it started. I had some... I recorded this series quite a while ago, so I don't remember the exact issue. It was either corrupted footage that I lost, or it was a problem with the actual game save. So I lost all my work and then had to redo it. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but basically the consequence is that I don't have footage of some of the building of this area, including a lot of the main Chanson kind of more urban area. Like you saw that neighborhood pop up before on the other side of the main road, and yeah, I just didn't have footage for it, so I apologize for that. I definitely learned a lot of lessons both building this city and recording this series and editing this series, both in terms of the city building side, like trying to learn from my mistakes and look back at what I did well and what I didn't do well, but also on the technical side of things in terms of making videos. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to make changes in my other series, Todo Santos, and anything else that comes after that. And yeah, this was really a big learning experience for city production and media production. So I hope you'll bear with me through any of the technical problems with the series. Like I mentioned before, after the series, there are going to be a few hopefully interesting videos where I've, for the most part, cleaned up those technical problems. So hopefully those will be a little more bearable to watch, a little more enjoyable, and give you a more complete glimpse into Alpenglow and all these things that I'm doing here that maybe aren't best represented by this footage. Anyway, I feel like I'm getting kind of fixated on that, so let's go back to the build. Right now I'm starting on the main grid for Chanson. So even though this is a much more recent development, I'm thinking like 1960s or maybe even 70s, so the road network isn't going to necessarily exactly mirror the stuff you get in the original downtown, which is a bit of an older road system, probably like 1.5 centuries old. They still wanted to go with a grid. For some reason, I'm not sure exactly what their reasoning was, but we have these much wider blocks because back in downtown, they're quite cramped as a result of it being a much older development. And now they just have wider blocks in order to fit in bigger plots of land for bigger buildings, and of course, lots of parking because we're closing in on this being almost a suburb. Yeah, and then we just have a very simple one-way system where the main strip that runs through Chanson is 2 one-way roads, and then we have another set of one-way roads perpendicular that are somewhat spaced out, and those are, the main higher speed roads where there's a little bit of commercial and office development along it, and otherwise they're just low speed 2-way roads where it's going to very quickly transition into a low density neighborhood. So my idea for why this little town here sprung up, it's not technically a town, it's part of Alpenglow, but I'm just going to call it a town. I think it's a good enough of a descriptor. My story behind this town is that there was a boom in growth in Alpenglow at some point in the 60s or 70s, and so they needed a new hospital to provide enough service for all these people who, are getting into all the unfortunate things that happen to Sims in this city, like slipping on sidewalks and having their houses deleted, that sort of thing. So anyway, they built up this big hospital complex, and then this little bit of a town rose up around it. So there would be various offices for medical services that don't quite fit into the main hospital, and there would be a bit of a commercial area to go with that as well. And then there's housing as well. Might not necessarily be housing for all the people who work there, but it was just a area where residential was zoned at the same time in order to try to meet the growing demand for homes in Alpenglow. Unfortunately, this main strip of Chanson is the area that was affected by that problem I was talking about earlier. I'm very disappointed that there's no footage of that. So I hope if you're interested in that, you'll at least be able to get your fill of that from the final cinematic video of the city and those other videos that will follow the series, which I'm not going to spoil yet, but I'm pretty happy with them. So hopefully you will enjoy those as well. All right. So generally, as I've been moving away from the downtown, as I mentioned before, trying to make it more spread out and looking like it's transitioning to the suburbs. But Chanson is one exception for this. This is kind of like Cardston on the other end of town, which we made a few episodes ago. So this main core of Chanson is quite a bit more dense, although it's still, one-story single-family homes for the most part. But as far as how they're packed together, it's quite a bit more dense than the surrounding areas, which we're going to be filling in next episode. You can compare that to, for example, the what we made last episode, where we fit in that very, very sparsely developed neighborhood across the freeway from here. And that just shows you basically how the urban development of Alpenglow has changed over the years and followed various trends. And I'm just finishing up very quickly by setting up some lane connections on these asymmetrical roads so that we can have proper turning lanes, and just trying to make it all logical and help the traffic flow a little better once we get cars going through here. Very last thing, just setting the stage for a bit of a park that we're going to be putting in next episode, and trying to connect some of the roads with some pedestrian paths. Thank you so much for watching this penultimate episode of Alpenglow. I really appreciate your time, and I can't wait to see you on the very last episode of Alpenglow and everything that's to come after that. Bye.